Welcome. If you're tuning in, you probably know how vital it is to stay informed, especially for UPSC preparation, right? Both mains and prelims.
Absolutely.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into something really crucial for understanding India's governance.
Yeah.
How justice is actually delivered.
And we're using the brand new India Justice Report 2025 as our guide. The findings were just published in The Hindu.
Right, a key source for aspirants. Our mission here is pretty focused. We'll pull out the most critical insights from this IJR 2025.
Exactly. We want to give you a clear, concise picture of where India stands, state by state, on justice delivery. Look at capacity, performance, across 4 key pillars the report focuses on.
Okay, let's unpack those pillars first. What are they?
So the report breaks it down into the police, law and order investigation, then prisons, the judiciary itself, and finally legal aid and state human rights commissions.
Got it. And how does the report actually measure performance across these pillars?
It uses 5 main parameters. Things like human resources, staffing levels, essentially, infrastructure, budgets, of course, workload, and importantly, diversity gives a pretty rounded view.
And it groups the states too, right? To make comparisons fair.
Yeah, that's a smart move. They split them into large mid-sized states that's over 1 crore population and small states under 1 crore. So you're comparing apples to apples, more or less.
Okay, framework established. Let's get to the results. Who's leading the pack? Which states are doing relatively well according to the IGR 2025?
Right. The top performers in that large and mid-sized category, it's Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and Telangana leading the way.
Interesting mix there. And for the smaller states?
Sikkim comes out on top for the smaller states group. So those are kind of the benchmarks we're seeing.
Okay, benchmarks are useful. But what about improvement? Sometimes that tells a different story. Any states showing significant progress?
That's a really important point. The report does highlight states showing the most improvement. And here we see Bihar, Chhattisgarh, and Odisha standing out.
Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Odisha. Okay, so it shows things aren't static. Progress is possible.
Precisely. It adds that dynamic element to the picture.
All right, let's dig into the first pillar then. The police. The report seems to present a bit of a contradiction here, doesn't it?
It does, somewhat. On one hand, you see the highest per capita spending among all 4 pillars going to the police. It's about 12,275 per person.
That sounds like a significant investment.
It is. It shows a clear financial priority towards, policing and maintaining order.
But, and it's a big but.
Yeah.
Does that spending translate into enough boots on the ground? The report flags manpower issues, right?
Exactly where the contradiction lies. Despite that spending, there's a huge officer shortfall, about 28%. That's a major gap.
28%. That must impact workload response times.
Immensely. And think about this. For you as potential administrators, this is a key challenge. Plus, the overall police presence is low. Only 120 police per lakh population.
How does that compare globally?
Well, the global norm is considered around 222 per lakh, so we're way below that. It works out to roughly 1 police officer for every 831 people. They're stretched thin.
And what about diversity within the force, specifically women?
Another area needing serious attention. Only 8% of officer posts are held by women. That's quite low.
8%. And at senior levels?
Even more stark. Out of nearly 5,000 senior IPS roles, fewer than 1,000 are women. And the vast majority of women in the police, about 90%, are in the constabulary ranks.
So a real pyramid structure issue there in terms of gender.
Very much so. There's a long way to go for parity.
The report does mention women help desks, though. Is that a positive sign?
It is a positive step, yes. About 78% of police stations now apparently have these desks. It's definitely welcome for accessibility.
But needs to be seen in the broader context of overall representation.
Precisely. It's one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Okay, let's shift gears to the second pillar, prisons. The headline seems to be overcrowding.
Overcrowding is a massive issue. The report flags a 131% occupancy rate nationally.
131%. So facilities designed for 100 people are holding 131.
Essentially, yes. Severe overcrowding. And think about the conditions that creates. The impact on health, sanitation, basic dignity. It's a human rights concern.
And it's not just about lack of space, is it? Staffing seems to be a major problem, too.
Absolutely. The overcrowding problem is made worse by critical staff shortages. Get this, 28% shortfall in officers, 44% in correctional staff.
44% in correctional staff. That's huge.
It is. And 43% deficit in medical staff within prisons. These shortages cripple effective management and any real attempt at rehabilitation.
The medical staff shortage, that doctor-inmate ratio must be concerning.
Extremely. The report puts it at 1 doctor for every 775 inmates.
1 to 775. What's considered the norm?
The recognized standard is closer to 1.300, so we're nowhere near that. It raises serious questions about healthcare access for inmates.
And the projections for the future don't look good either.
No, they predict that if things continue like this, inmate numbers could exceed capacity by 1.65 lakh by 2030. It's unsustainable.
Another really striking figure from the prison section is the percentage of under trials.
Yes, this is deeply, deeply concerning for the justice system. 76% of the entire prison population are under trials. People awaiting trial, not convicted.
3/4 of the prison population.
Think about that. It points to massive inefficiencies, probably backlogs in the courts. But also, it's a huge human rights issue. People locked up, sometimes for years, without a conviction.
How long are we talking?
The report notes many spend 3 to 5 years in custody before their trial concludes, sometimes longer than a potential sentence.
And you mentioned court backlogs. That links to judicial vacancies, I imagine.
There's definitely a connection there. Fewer judges means slower trials, which contributes to this high under-trial population, many of whom are likely from poorer backgrounds who can't afford bail or good representation.
There was also a disturbing point about caste segregation, even after a Supreme Court ruling.
Yes. That's quite shocking. The Supreme Court struck down casteist provisions in prison manuals in 2024, but the report suggests caste-based segregation is still happening on the ground.
Shows how entrenched these issues are.
It really does. Translating legal change into practical reality is often the hardest part.
And finally, on prisons, the rehabilitation side. Education, vocational training.
Seems largely aspirational, unfortunately. In 2022, only 6% of inmates got any education, and just 2% got vocational training.
Very low numbers.
Yeah, it suggests the system is overwhelmingly focused on just confinement, not really on preparing people for life after release, which, impacts recidivism rates down the line.
Okay, let's move to the third pillar, the judiciary itself.
Yeah.
Vacancies seem to be the big story here, too.
They really are. The overall number of judges is around 21,000. That sounds like a lot. But per capita, it's only about 15 judges per million people.
15 per million. And what's recommended?
The Law Commission actually recommended 50 judges per million. So we're way off the mark.
And that obviously impacts access to justice, case pendency.
Directly. Fewer judges, longer queues, justice delayed.
Are these vacancies spread across different court levels?
Yes. The report shows high vacancy rates in high courts, about 33% vacant, and in the district courts, it's around 21%.
Significant gaps at both crucial levels.
Absolutely. Puts immense strain on the whole system.
And what about funding for the judiciary? Is it prioritized in budgets?
Doesn't seem like it. The overall spending averages out to just Rs. 182 per person per year on the entire judiciary.
182 rupees. That feels incredibly low for such a vital function.
It is, and quite telling. No state allocates more than 1% of its total budget to the judiciary. It suggests, well, a potential lack of financial priority compared to other sectors.
Okay, Pillar 4, legal aid and paralegal volunteers. Crucial for access to justice, especially for the poor. What's the situation here?
Also quite concerning, frankly. The per capita spending on legal aid is minuscule, just R6 per person.
6 rupees.
6, that's it. Which severely limits the ability to provide effective legal aid services, especially reaching marginalized communities.
And given that huge under-trial population we discussed, many of whom are likely poor, this lack of legal aid funding is a major bottleneck.
It's a critical systemic failure, really. It undermines the whole principle of equal access to justice.
And the paralegal volunteers, the PLVs, their numbers are down.
Alarmingly so. A 38% drop in the number of PLVs over the last 5 years.
38% drop. That leaves a big gap, doesn't it? What's the ratio now?
It results in only about 3 PLVs per lakh population. Very low.
Remind us quickly, what role do these PLVs play? Why are they important?
So PLVs are trained under the Legal Services Authorities Act. They're meant to be the grassroots connectors, providing basic legal advice, spreading awareness, helping people navigate the system, especially in rural or underserved areas.
Kind of like first responders for legal issues.
That's a good way to put it. They bridge the gap between communities and the formal legal system. So losing so many of them really weakens that crucial link.
Okay, so bringing this all together, especially for our listeners, focus on UPSC. The IJR 2025 paints a picture of, well, persistent challenges across all four pillars.
Definitely. The report really underscores critical issues, especially in policing and the judiciary core areas for mains prep. And for those wanting to dig deeper, the report itself points towards further reading.
Like what specifically?
It mentions looking into issues associated with policing in India and issues related to Indian judiciary. Good starting points for more in-depth understanding.
And for understanding potential solutions or reforms.
It also flags exploring initiatives related to judicial reforms in India. Knowing what's being tried, what's working, what's not, that's vital for a nuanced perspective for the exams.
So for you, the dedicated UPSC aspirant listening, this report is a critical resource. It shows the ambitions, yes, but also the very real fundamental capacity gaps that persist despite, digitization and other reforms.
These gaps have huge implications, right? For governance, for social equity, for the rule of law itself. Thinking through these connections is key for your preparation.
Which leads us to a final thought. Maybe something provocative for you to mull over.
Go on.
Given these deep-rooted challenges we've discussed in policing, prisons, judiciary, legal aid, what are the truly transformative but also sustainable solutions India needs to actually strengthen justice delivery for everyone? Not just incremental changes, but fundamental shifts.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Something critical for future policymakers and administrators to grapple with.
Absolutely. And if you want more deep dives like this, analyzing crucial topics for your UPSC journey,
make sure to like, subscribe, maybe leave a comment if you have specific questions. We regularly analyze key sources, like the Hindu, which we use today, to bring you the insights you need.